Hi and welcome to pmplounge.com. This is Lounge Fever. And today we are discussing some tips for stakeholder commitment. Now, I didn't come up with these tips. Basically, there was um, an article which I was kind of asked to explain what these tips were. So let's take a look. So this is basically from my LinkedIn, wherein somebody by the name Sidra had shared this article. Need help to understand tips and advice offered by experts in sustaining stakeholder commitment. So this is the link which talks about stakeholder commitment, and this user wanted to kind of understand what they were talking about. So I was basically linked here. So I went over and tried to understand what this article was about. I had to go over the entire article. I went over that particular section twice. The tips and advice offered by experts in sustaining stakeholder commitment. So I went over it twice. I did a little bit of research to kind of try and understand what exactly is this article talking about. So let me share that article as well. So this is basically the area, a screenshot from that article, the area wherein the user who commented and asked me for help was not able to understand. So this is basically the the tips for stakeholder commitment. So it says keeping stakeholders committed also has its challenges as each stakeholder can experience difficulties at different stages of commitment. That is, fortunately, there are tips and advice offered by experts in sustaining stakeholder commitment. Now, I think the user Sidra, who had kind of linked me in for this article and asked for help to kind of understand what this article is talking about, she's actually very correct, because the entire language of the article is something different from the way they have explained this part of the article. So that's kind of funny a little. But yeah, I mean, in order to understand, let's try to understand what exactly stakeholder is. First up, stakeholder basically means anyone who is positively or negatively impacted by the project. So if you have a project that is going on, and by the way, Sidra had also asked for how these tips can be useful in a small organization. So if you have stakeholders, if you have a project, you obviously have stakeholders, right? Because there would be a set of people who would be positively or negatively impacted by that project. So this holds true whether you're a small organization or a big organization. These points that they have discussed in this article holds true for all kinds of organizations. So coming back, what actually stakeholder is. So a stakeholder is anyone who is positively or negatively impacted by the project. Now, the first tip for stakeholder commitment is the suggestion of using Stephen Covey's 360-degree feedback. Now, 360-degree, as the name suggests, is a feedback from everyone involved in the cycle. Everyone who you feel is a stakeholder, everyone who is positively or negatively impacted has a place in the stakeholder register or some other project artifact wherein you have listed who all are the stakeholders for the project. So you are supposed to take feedback from all these stakeholders. And this is why they talk about a key to developing total stakeholder commitment is to institute stakeholder information systems that provide regular 360-degree feedback concerning the perceptions of your primary constituents in all aspects of your organizations. These systems can become the core catalyst for catapulting or organize your organization to its next level of high performance and quality by using this data to grow powerful, trusting relationships. Now, like I said, the entire article has a different tone to it, has a different kind of language to it as compared to the language that they've used in these last 3 points. So they're talking about 360-degree feedback here, which, like I explained, is a feedback from essentially everyone who is a stakeholder. So you take feedback from all of them regarding the project, of course, regarding the progress of the project, regarding the status of the project, regarding the outcome of the project, regarding how they are impacted by the project. So you take feedback from all of them. Now, what do you do with that feedback? You feed that feedback in an information system. What is this information system? So it's called stakeholder information system. But at this point, it is also important to understand what an information system is. So an information system is basically an organized system. Now this, when we say system, it could mean a website, it could mean a tool, it could mean a software. So it is an organized system for the collection, organization, storage, and communication of information. So, like I said, this system, the stakeholder information system, could be a website, could be a software, which is basically used to communicate, store, organize, and collect information. Now, since we are following a 360-degree feedback here, which means you will have a lot of feedback from a lot of stakeholders, you feed that feedback or you store that feedback in an information system. You call that a stakeholder information system, and you make use of that system to kind of use those feedbacks to your advantage. Let's say a very powerful, a very a very important stakeholder has a really good feedback. It's there in your information system. It can be communicated to the key resources of the project, the project manager. The project manager gets that feedback from that powerful stakeholder, and he can make use of that feedback and can make the corresponding changes in his plan, right? So this is what the first point is talking about. It essentially means that you need to take feedback from every single stakeholder around you. All right, moving on. The second point is about focusing additional energy on activities that both educate and expand understanding. Now, again, we are talking about stakeholder. Let's not forget that. So, this point suggests that we, as a project manager, we, as either when we say, when I say we, I mean the project manager, right? So, as a project manager, we need to make sure that we are focusing additional energy on the activities that educate the stakeholders, that expand their understanding of the project, of course. So, an example that they've given in this article is to include education workshops or one-on-one meetings to enhance a sponsor's level of commitment. Now, engage the sponsor in strengthening ownership by the change agents or introduce agents to proposed benefits of the project and the direct effect the activities will have on them. Like I said, the article has a different language here, especially in this part. So they're talking about having, spending additional energy. They're suggesting that project managers spend additional energy and organize certain activities like workshops or one-on-one meetings to educate and expand the stakeholders' understanding. When they say a sponsor here, enhance a sponsor's level of commitment. Sponsor is also a stakeholder. Let's not forget that. So for example's sake, they are mentioning sponsor here in this example. But like I said, a sponsor is also essentially a stakeholder. So you can have these education workshops and one-on-one meetings, not just with the sponsor, but any other stakeholder who is as important as a sponsor. So a sponsor is of course someone who is sponsoring the project, who's providing the monetary backing for the project. So of course he's extremely important stakeholder, right? But let's say the CEO of your organization could also be equally important if he is that interested into your project. So you may have to kind of conduct workshops or one-on-one meetings with the CEO to explain and educate him about your project, right? So this is how, when you kind of spend this energy to explain and educate the stakeholders, you will get their commitments. Now they've also talked about change agents here, introduce agents to propose benefits of the project and direct effect the activities will have on them. Change agents, this sometimes is used to refer to other resources. You may have certain SMEs, you may have certain project resources who you want to kind of work only as change agents, so that they can kind of assess the feedback which is coming in from these stakeholders. They can take whatever these stakeholders are saying about the project and kind of try to implement that, try to have that change done in the project. So people like these, resources like these, are known as change agents. So this point, although it talks about a lot of things, it essentially says that as a project manager, it is our responsibility, our duty to, have the understanding of the stakeholders clear. Make sure the stakeholders get what we are talking about. Make sure the stakeholders are educated enough. So that exactly is what this second point says. Let's move on to the third point, and that says that you have to treat stakeholders like customers. So, your stakeholders, people impacted by a project, you need to treat them like customers. You need to give them the importance that they deserve. And if you have to change their minds, you must do so slowly and subtly, ensuring that they believe their what's in it for me are being satisfied by your strategies. So, you may not agree with these stakeholders, but if they are important stakeholders, you have to make sure that they kind of approve of the project. So, to make sure that they approve of the project, you can kind of try and change their minds, but you must do so slowly and subtly, ensuring that they believe whatever it was it in for whatever was it for them as part of this project is still there. So those are the 3 points that this article talks about as far as stakeholders commitment is concerned. Number 1, take feedback from everyone possible. Number 2, try and educate the stakeholders. And number 3, give them the importance that they deserve. Treat them like your customers. All right, moving on. So, although the article that I just discussed talks about how you can kind of make sure that the stakeholders are committed to your project, that's great, right? It's always helpful when the key stakeholders are committed to your project and they feel that your project is as important as you think it is, right? But three things that you need to consider here are: Number 1, not all stakeholders have the same power or impact. So you need to understand that, because although you're taking 360-degree feedback and you're kind of having feedback from everyone, you need to understand that a feedback by the CEO of your company about your project has more importance than a feedback by, let's say, a tester from your project, right? So a tester from your project might suggest that certain functionality is not that helpful, is not that useful, but a CEO, will have more importance. And when a CEO says something is important, some functionality is important in the project, well, that means he is coming from a business mindset. He is coming from the CEO suite, the CEO level. Of course it is more important, right? So I mean, this I just took this as an example. By no means should you not listen to your testers, and should you not consider what your testers say as unimportant. Of course testers are important. They are very important resources to your project. But I just, for the example's sake, I said that something coming in from the CEO of your company about your project could be more important and could have more power and more impact on your project than something coming from the tester of your project. So that's something to consider. not all stakeholders will always be satisfied, right? So in the CEO versus tester example, if the tester is saying that there is certain functionality that will take a lot of effort in testing, and then your CEO is saying that he needs that functionality out as part of your project. He needs that out in the market for from your project. He needs that functionality in your project by any means. Of course, the tester will not be satisfied with that, right? The tester will have to work an extra mile or maybe a few extra miles to make sure the project gets that functionality and it is thoroughly tested as well. So all stakeholders, if all stakeholders are satisfied for a project, that's all well and good, but that's also far from reality, to be frank. In my experience, you will certainly have stakeholders who are not happy with your project no matter what you do. In fact, I just did a video recently the other day on how other project managers can also be a stakeholder in your project. So, if you are kind of blocking the company's resources and they are waiting for the resources for their project to kick off, obviously they are a stakeholder in your project, and obviously they are stakeholders who are not satisfied with your project, right? I will link to that video in the description, so do go over it. It will be helpful from the perspective of the topic that we are discussing here. So that was the second thing to consider. The third thing is they don't have to be. All stakeholders don't have to be satisfied. So, like I mentioned in my example of how another project manager can also be a stakeholder in your project, he doesn't have to be satisfied, right? You have to take care of your project. You have to make sure the project does what it is set out to do. And if the other project manager whose resources you are blocking is not happy with it, then that's how it is going to be. He doesn't have to be happy with your project all the time. So those are the three things to consider. Like I mentioned, the article talks about stakeholder commitment. It's a great thing to do. It's always important to have your stakeholders committed to your project. It's always important to have your stakeholders satisfied and happy with your project. But at the same time, these are the three things that you need to consider because these are coming from experience and from reality. So that is all that I had with this video. If you liked the video, do hit the like button and subscribe to our YouTube channel if you haven't already. Do check us out on our social media, facebook.com/PMP Lounge and twitter.com/PMP Lounge, so that you don't miss out on the latest updates that we put out. And always check out our website pmplounge.com for the latest, the best free articles and videos regarding project management, PMP certification, project management industry available out there. As always, you can comment your question or you can send them to us on our social media and we'll try to answer them then and there. If they are really important and will be helpful for others as well, we will make a video on them just like this one. Thank you.